provide additional input. And so that's what we're doing today. And what we're not talking about, unfortunately, is the fact that, you know, Texas has continuously gerrymandered mid-cycle. Texas has every single year since 1965 violated the Voting Rights Act. Every single time. We're going down a rabbit hole here on transparency and all of the procedural matters, but what's not included here is the reaction that Texas, your colleagues in Texas, have continuously violated the Voting Rights Act, have continuously mid-cycle gerrymandered. It's unfortunate.
So on my own time, it sounds like the statements today is that no member of this legislature saw these maps before they were public, and we all know that's not true, and I'm encouraging the media to follow up with every member of the legislature, because under current Constitution, not one member on this in this body on either house is allowed to adjust a map. And it was reported that there was different members that adjusted these maps. And if you wanted to do it correctly, you should have gone to the people of California, get the authority, and then draw the maps. So any member here, let's be crystal clear, and I'm asking the media to follow up, any member here that adjusted these maps violated the Constitution today, and is, again, evasive answers that we know that now it just shows that there's no transparency, because no one can answer one member on this floor that had participated in drawing these maps. You say it's the legislature, you're the author, but you didn't have any participation in these maps? Again, that's not transparency, and I'm urging the media to follow up with each and every one of these members as this moves forward, if you get the 2/3 vote, which I believe you will, to ask these questions. Now, if I had the power, as was stated, by the way, I don't know one member of the Texas legislature, not one. I was elected here in California, not Texas. And it was stated in the opening, you have the power to shut this down. If I had the power to stop this, I would stop it. I'm telling the media right now, if the Republicans in California had the power to stop this, we would stop this today. And they are misrepresenting what is the actual truth moving forward. Redistricting Commission, let's make it clear, the redistricting, nonpartisan redistricting
Senator
commission.
Strickland, if you can please address the body and not the media when you're speaking.
I'm looking around, my other colleagues, I could look around my whole...
Excuse me, Senator Strickland?
I'm only allowed to look forward?
Please look at me while you are making your address. Thank you.
That's a new rule that I haven't heard of before,
I would
to be
appreciate
honest.
if you comply.
I've been here over a decade.
Everything is through the presiding officer. Thank you.
It is through the presiding officer.
Exactly. So if you can direct your comments to me, or if you have a question, you can direct it
let's be clear.
Excuse me.
Okay.
If you have a question, you can direct it to that member, but if you're speaking, please direct it to the presiding officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's be clear. It was stated in the opening that the redistricting, nonpartisan redistricting commission drew these lines and these maps. That's a false. They might have took it as a blueprint, but the nonpartisan redistricting commission did not draw these maps as it was stated in the opening. Again, people are trying to be misled of what this actually is. And members, this week's actions demonstrate why we need a nonpartisan Citizens Redistricting Commission and why it was passed in the first place. For my colleagues on the other side, who I deeply respect, sometimes I believe you think the ends justify the means. Let's go through what happened this week with no transparency, no input from the community across the state to draw these maps. And these maps were drawn behind closed doors with the governor and, what I understand, legislative leadership, and no one admits that they had any participation in these maps. They just came out of thin air. But again, let's look what happened this week in terms of transparency. You violated your own rule, the 30-day rule, to push this through. No one will admit that they drew these maps. And to the media, I'm saying you need to move forward, as this moves forward, to the famous line, what did they know and when did they know it? Which lawmakers saw these maps and had influence on these maps? Who paid for these maps? And the lack of transparency keeps going on and on and on. Let's see what we have here today, currently, before you go to the voters in November. What we have here today is the gold standard for redistricting nationally. It should be the national model and not thrown out. It's something that we should brag about here in the state of California, the fact that the people pick the lines, not the politicians. We have full transparency. In fact, we have hundreds of hearings throughout the state of California, in every corner of the state of California, so citizens can participate in the drawing of these maps that keep communities together of whole cities and counties. And the lines are drawn in public in front of everybody, in front of the world. Members, fair districts lead to fair representation. And if you pass this bill moving forward, and if it passes in November, which I don't believe it will, but if it does, what you're striving for is predetermined elections, meaning that there won't be one competitive race for Congress in California for the next 3 cycles. Members, that's not good for Democrats, independents, and Republicans. You're taking the voice away from Californians in terms of having fair representation and earning the trust of your voters, not having a predetermined election. Here in California, we have a system where citizens pick their representatives and not politicians picking the citizens. That's what you want to throw away. And what I heard from many of my colleagues on the other side, this is going to be temporary. From my experience, I have over a decade of experience here. Nothing is temporary when you do it. Former President Ronald Reagan said it best. We have long discovered that nothing lasts longer than a temporary government program. Even this week, the Assembly Elections Chair stated that the Democrats should do what we're doing here today in 2030, was quoted already. So when you say to the people of California, this is temporary, my experience is nothing's temporary here. I don't believe 1 second that this will be temporary, and neither should the people of California. Now, I do have a joint resolution 10. It's not up yet. I'll put it across the desk that says we should have nonpartisan redistricting districts and make it a model nationwide. I do believe it is wrong for Texas to do this. I do believe it's wrong for Illinois to do this. I do believe it's wrong for every other state where the politicians pick their citizens. It is wrong, both on the Democrat and Republican side. We should be promoting what we do here in California, not throwing it away. And that's what you're going to do if this is successful. You're going to take what is the national model for redistricting and put power in the people, and you're going to take it back to put in the power of the politicians so you don't have to really earn the vote of your constituents because the election will be predetermined. I also support Congressman Kevin Kiley's legislation that bans mid-decade redistricting nationwide. Members, I heard that Speaker Pelosi and other Democrats from the DCCC from California were here. What would be more constructive is that you jump on board to Kevin Kiley's bill, pass it on the national level, and therefore we won't have mid-decade redistricting. So members, again, going back to the census, 2020, there's been massive population shifts since 2020. And when you look at these maps, for example, Los Angeles has lost representation in the last 5 years, but under these maps, they pick up a seat. The Inland Empire has gained population over the last 5 years, but they lose a seat. And it's very clear in federal law that these districts have to be equal in representation. So if you use the 2020 census, as was stated here before us, this will be thrown out by courts because it is very crystal clear that the deviation that you have when you draw congressional districts is very, very small. And members, you know this is wrong. You know what you're doing today is wrong. You know it's not good for democracy in California. And you weren't elected by anybody. You weren't elected by the people of Illinois. You weren't elected by the people of Texas. You weren't elected by the people of New York or North Carolina. You were elected by the people of California. And you were elected to defend the Constitution. The Constitution, again, I believe my colleagues, whether you knew it or not, violated the oath of the Constitution that you swore to. And I do believe, I understand, but the ends don't justify the means. You know this is bad for independents, Democrats, and Republicans throughout the state of California. I want you to look deep inside your soul, and you know this is wrong moving forward. You know this is not good for democracy in California, and I'm urging your no vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President, may I respond? So,
Would you like to respond in your close?
I can do that too, but I just wanted to make sure that it was known, if I may, just to refute some of the misinformation that had been put out.
Can you hold on for just one moment?
You're going to respond to every speaker?
Senator Gonzalez, unless someone has asked you a specific question, which there was not a question, we're going to have you use those in your close.
Okay.
Senator Nielo, you are recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, I hope you will indulge me for a moment for a bit of digression into some political history. No misdirection, just the facts, ma'am. In 2008, Proposition 11 was put on the ballot to establish the Commission for Redistricting for state legislators, and I think also the BOE. And my friend from West Sacramento was correct in I think the Assembly Elections Committee yesterday when he said that that bill barely passed. It was definitely a squeaker, maybe less than 1% over 50%. That's correct. There is a rest of the story, though, which I'll get to in a moment. Importantly, one main opponent to that proposition was the California State Democratic Party. Well, what do you know? Now, fast forward, 2010. Proposition 20 was placed on the ballot to perhaps correct an incompletion of the previous Proposition 11 to add congressional districts to the commission's responsibility. That's what we're talking about here, congressional districts, not what Proposition 11 did, only state offices, but congressional districts. Now the rest of the story. That proposition passed overwhelmingly, over 60% of the vote. Interestingly, there was very little opposition to that proposition. Now, this is important. There was a reason for that. What is the easiest way to defeat a proposition? That's where misdirection comes in. Confusion. There was also on that ballot Proposition 27, which proposed to completely abolish the Redistricting Commission. Get rid of it. Not maintain it, which we're talking about supposedly here, but get rid of it. The ostensible proponent for that in the literature was UCLA professor and former chair of the Fair Political Practices Commission, Daniel Lowenstein. But he said the real sponsors were Democratic members of Congress. Well, what do you know? The contributors to that campaign, which ranged from $5,000 to $225,000, were Judy Chu, Anna Eshoo, Zoe Lofgren, Nancy Pelosi, Doris Matsui, our own colleague here from San Pedro, who was in Congress at the time, Linda Sanchez, and Adam Schiff, as well as a number of others who are no longer in Congress. The confusion didn't work. What was the result of that competing measure? It was defeated by almost an exact mirror image by which Proposition 20 passed. It was defeated with 60% saying no. So now comes a convenient opportunity, very convenient opportunity. Governor Newsom wants 5 more Democratic congressional seats, and Democrats see an opportunity for California taxpayers to pay for what they could not get with Proposition 27 in 2010. It has, after all, been reported that the DCC has been involved with the current effort. $250 million, or whatever the amount is, to fund this partisan effort to thwart the will of the voters is absolutely unacceptable. Members, just history, not misdirection. Those are just the facts, ma'am. I urge a no vote.
Thank you. Senator Grayson, you are recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Madam President. I do have a question to the author.
Will the author take a question?
Thank you very much. First, I have two questions. I'll just ask them both and then answer all in one. The first one is, the actions taken by Texas, are they permanent or temporary? And does Texas practice mid-cycle redistricting? And then, so that was a two-part question, the first one. The second question is, for redistricting bills, I believe there was some reference made to that. Could the author elaborate on what was talked about as far as some redistricting bills that had been opposed?
You may proceed.
Thank you for the question. And yes, first question, Texas's actions, their action yesterday is actually permanent. There is no temporary aspect to the gerrymandering they just approved yesterday through their House. Mid-cycle redistricting is a constant, and there's no input for Texas voters to weigh in. Very opposite from what we're doing here. Ours is temporary until 2030. And of course, we're letting the voters decide whether to do this mid-cycle or not, which we are doing through a constitutional amendment. So we are absolutely doing that. On the second piece, thank you for your question on redistricting. Now, as mentioned, just as of last year, there have been over 30 bills last year and up until going back to about 2014, where a number of bills had been presented in this body to support an independent redistricting commission in various parts of the state of California, in places like San Luis Obispo and Sacramento and Orange County, Riverside, Fresno, Kern, and all of those bills and efforts to establish an independent citizens redistricting committee in all parts of the state of California had been voted no by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. And so I'm not understanding what they're saying in terms of wanting now an opportunity to have an independent redistricting commission be the end all, say all, while we're sitting here getting attacked by President Trump on our democracy.
Thank you for that additional information, if I may, through the chair. Would this, and this is just a hypothetical question on my part, or maybe not, would this measure impact any other districts outside of congressional districts? The answer is no. And another question is, who will ultimately have the final say on this matter? And the answer is the voters of the state of California. Senators, I rise in support of this measure. Throughout my life and throughout my career, I've been guided by some very simple and basic values. First and foremost among them, fairness and respect, with commitment to be fair and respectful of my neighbors, and also to respect the rule of law. This is an impactful day, especially for all of us here in California, which is why the mid-decade redistricting efforts being conducted by other states certainly appear to undermine these values in pursuit of power simply for the sake of power. And what is most troubling to me is that these efforts appear to be equivalent of changing the rules of a game after it has started. Imagine a football game that is tied at halftime, and one team comes out for the second half declaring that for the rest of the game, their touchdowns are worth twice as many points. Is that just? Is that justice? Is this not the situation we face here, where a number of states have decided to change the rules of redistricting at halftime? Senators, we are literally at halftime in this redistricting match that we now find ourselves in. 5 years in to a 10-year cycle, facing the same situation as the hypothetical football game that was just described. Fairness would dictate that either all the touchdowns are worth twice as many points, or none of the touchdowns are worth twice as many points. Justice would dictate that we all abide by the same rules regardless of the game, which is exactly why we're here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Choi, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam, and the members. I rise today in strong opposition to this proposal for special election to redraw our congressional districts in California. Many points have been raised, and Texas has been described as a bad actor. Very interesting, and then also the regulations on the sports in halftime changing the rules. I would like to apply these 2 points. If Texas was a bad actor, are you supposed to follow the bad actor? If somebody runs through a red light or kills somebody, you do the same thing? I mean, that's exactly what we are trying to do. And then as a model for Texas, it's a model we're going to follow whatever Texas does. If you say that that action is wrong, just let's don't do that. Isn't it more common sense? Now, many things, many points in this direction we can argue about. But let me focus on this measure is in another sense, not urgent item. It is not necessary. It is certainly not affordable. Let me focus on the financial aspect of that. In California, we have projected to face $12 billion of deficit in the coming year. You all know that. Every dollar matters. Yet this proposal would drain an estimated $250 million of general budget just to conduct a special election. This is money we do not have, and the money that could be put to far better use. Think about what $250 million can do or represents. It could finance tens of thousands of child care slots for working families. It could support the financial aid for thousands of college students struggling with tuition. It could keep after-school programs and the mental health services available for our children. It can fund the public safety and the wildfire prevention programs at a time when California depends on them most. In order to help close the $12 billion state budget deficit, the supermajority decided to cut California peer-run Warm Line in Orange County, a key program that has provided a free 24/7 mental health service to millions of residents. That was only $5 million. I was hoping that you would agree to that, but it was cut off. And here, $250 million is just pocket money to spend on this unnecessary special election, a special redrawing in the mid-decade. As a result, Orange County, where I represent the county Warm Line program, has laid off 127 staff members and is now facing to end operations completely. Think about the victims, the customers who have used this Warm Line and then also unburdened all the burdens that the 911 system is getting. And we know that the 911 system right now is answered so late because of a shortage of people with the shortage of staffing in 911 answering service. Instead of funding critical programs like these, we are being asked to throw these dollars away on a political maneuvering. This is not about the fairness. This is not about the people. And this is certainly not about protecting democracy that you all say that we let's keep the democracy, fairness. This is a partisan power grab, and it comes at the expense of Californians we are here to serve. So I ask you, my colleagues, will we tell Californians that their child care, their education, their health care, their public safety programs don't matter as much as a rushed and unnecessary special election redrawing? Or will we stand with them and say no to this reckless use of taxpayer dollars? Senators and colleagues, let us show some fiscal responsibility and common sense. Please vote for no on this wasteful proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Laird, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. In 2021, a particularly egregious gerrymander was done in my district in San Luis Obispo County. It was for the Board of Supervisors districts, and it was proposed by one party, a party that was losing registration, was no longer the party with the greatest plurality in that county. And they passed a map suggested by one political committee to egregiously gerrymander that county. Under the census, minor tweaks to the existing districts would have been in order. Instead, it was jam the Democrats into one district, make the other 4 districts in a way that they likely could go the other way, and preserve a majority that didn't exist in the electorate at large. And it was gross. There were some people that would vote every 2 years for 3 cycles for supervisor. There were some that were the opposite. There were thousands of people would have 2 supervisors at once. thousands more would have no supervisor. It was a dislocation that was off the charts. And so what happened? I introduced last year Senate Bill 977 to say we would have independent redistricting for San Luis Obispo County. We would have the commission. That egregious line drawing would never happen again for that county. And then what happened in this body? In this body, 9 senators thought that was just fine, that egregious redistricting that would have been rectified by commission is what they voted against. And it was said, just the facts on one speech, and then there were all the names that were given about those facts. Well, let me say in just the facts, it was senators from Jackson, Beaver, Bakersfield, San Diego, Sacramento, Yucaipa, and Murrieta that said, we are fine with egregious gerrymandering. We do not want a commission. We do not want fairness in redistricting. Let's be clear about that. So when it was said, what is known and when did we know it? In 2024, we knew that was an egregious redistricting, and 9 senators said it was just fine with them. It was said fair districts lead to fair representation, but 9 senators said not in San Luis Obispo County. It was said that politicians should not pick their voters, but was fine for 9 senators in San Luis Obispo County. It was said that we are witnessing a partisan power grab. We witnessed one there, and it was fine for 9 senators in San Luis Obispo County. So let's just call that what it is. We have born-again commission lovers here. They had a chance to have the fair redistricting